Everything on my wall is something I created, and it's not out of ego. It's because when I'm sitting in the chair and I'm struggling through the next chapter, I can look up and be like, I did this before, I can do it again. And so I'm a big believer of putting up all your own accomplishments on the wall. I don't care if it's what it is. You don't have to have them framed and stuff, but I would definitely put up things that you are proud of on your wall to remind you when things are hard. I've done it before, I can do it again.
All right, guys, welcome to the Creative Synergy Show. Once again, I am your host, Coach Cyn. Today, we have another special guest in-house. He is an author and a veteran of the film industry. Doug Brode, creative mind behind multiple movies and TV shows, including work as a storyboard artist on films you might know, such as Iron Man, Thor, Planet of the Apes, and many others. Doug also created The Forbidden Science for HBO, and his interest in science led him to novel writing, where he blends aliens, time travel, and psychological suspense. Recently, his synthetic crime series, Shelly, has garnered notable acclaim. The series explores the lines between humans and androids against the backdrop of a police procedural blended with science fiction, mystery, and a touch of cyberpunk. Please welcome to the show, Doug Brode. Doug, what's up?
Hi. It's actually Brody, but that's okay.
Brody.
Everybody gets it.
That's all
okay.
good.
If I get a call and says, is Mr. Brode there? I assume it's a bill collector or something. I'm like, no, he died. It was tragic.
There you go. Well, I get Vespa, so if I'm Vespa and I own the Italian scooters, A+. So. But welcome on. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we met at Vegas Con or something, right? Is that where we met a couple years ago?
Yeah, the one and only Comic Con that we would get here in Vegas. It's since gone downhill. I don't really do that one anymore, but I've been meaning to get out to do the Long Beach one with you guys for a long time.
Oh, all right. Well, you're welcome to crash on our couch or something if you want to do something in LA.
Yeah, it's in the plans as soon as I get more books coming out. But speaking of books, you've got a lot of great news that you want to share. But before we get into all that, for the audience that may or may not, let's talk about some of your earlier work, because you were in the film industry for a long time, right?
30 years.
30 years is a long span. How'd you get started in there?
I was what's called a runner for Joel Silver. I'm delivering packages and stuff, and I would put drawings up on the walls and stuff because I wanted to be a storyboard artist. And director of a movie called House on a Hill was looking for a storyboard artist. He was on his cell phone. He's like, I need a storyboard artist, right? Well, I'll take this guy. And they got me into the union on my first show, and then after that, I did Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, which I did concept art on. But the one that kind of broke me, that really kind of gave me a career where I could pay bills and be a little somewhat steady, was Van Helsing for Stephen Sommers. So I storyboarded that.
And that was Hugh Jackman, right?
Yeah, that was just Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
And then after that, I ended up doing Iron Man, Star Trek, Harry Potter, Thor, stuff like that.
So because the Creative Synergy Show and everything that I'm doing now, it encompasses a lot of different creative aspects. So how did you become a storyboard artist? Were you really good at drawing, or how does that work?
Well, yeah, I was originally going to be a comic book artist. I went to a school called Joe Kubert for learning how to draw comic books. And then I got 2 years in. I was like, do I really want to draw guys in tights for the rest of my life? And so I went to college just trying to kind of figure out what I'm going to do. And I saw Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. And that had a huge impact on me. I was right at the perfect age. I was like 20 or whatever when that came out. And that's that won all kinds of awards for visuals and stuff. And a famous comic book artist named Mike Mignola had done the comic book adaptation, and he had done some storyboards for the film. And that got me interested in, well, what's a storyboard? And so I decided to go to LA after college and see if I could become a storyboard artist. And I happened to, get noticed. The one good thing about art, like visual art, is that unlike acting or writing or things like that, somebody will know in 3 seconds if you're what they want to hire. They'll just know immediately. It doesn't matter if you say a word. They just look at it and yes or no, this is what I'm looking for. And so that was definitely my in. And but it wasn't a straight shot. I also did after I did Planet of the Apes, and I thought, I made it. I didn't. I became a PA for Playboy for a couple of years, or about a year and a half, something like that. And but then I worked my way up to production designer on that. But Van Helsing, like I said, that was kind of the one where after that I was able to pretty much be a little more even keel about. I'm just doing storyboards.
I'm sure a lot of people will want me to ask about the Playboy thing, but that's for another interview for another time. So
Well, it's not nearly as exciting as you think.
It never is it?
Well, the problem is that when they're at lunch and their robes coming out and they're eating it with the thing, it loses whatever it is that you like when you're watching the movie.
There you go. So was Van Helsing one of the favorite movies that you worked on, or was there another favorite?
No, that was just one of the ones that definitely broke in for me. Of the projects that I've worked on that are other people's projects, I'm very proud of Iron Man. I'm very proud of, I was proud of Thor. I was proud of Star Trek, which I did not think was going to be as good as it was, because when I first read the script, kind of read like Harry Potter in space. I'm like, oh man, these guys are in school and they're like cracking all these jokes. And I'm like, oh, this is painful. But it came out really good, you know? So you never know. Sometimes, you know, Iron Man, we knew. Iron Man, was a good script. You know, I keep hearing the actors talking about how they improv the whole thing. They did with the dialogue, maybe, I don't remember, but I remember the story was there and I remember it had something. But I do also remember that was coming out the same summer as The Dark Knight. Yeah, The Dark Knight with Joker, and everybody was very much like, that's going to kill us. Like a year out, everybody knew, because Batman Begins was fantastic. Everybody just was waiting for the one with the Joker, and they were just like, you know, so Iron Man had much lower expectations. You know,
that's probably why it surprised a lot of people, because it was excellent.
Yeah, it came out really good.
For sure. Any memories from were you on set for anything, or?
Well, my last day on Iron Man was their first day of filming. What I remember about that was just that they served filet mignon and lobster tail on their first day. So every time I see these actors talking about how it was like this indie film, Iron Man was this indie film. It was not an indie film. I've worked on indie films like Paranormal Activity 3 or something. Those do not have lobster and filet mignon on day one. But yeah, no, I have some stories from Iron Man. I remember the first time they tried on the armor, everybody gathered around, all the big executives were there, and the guy was all lit up and it looked pretty good. It looked plastic. It didn't look like as cool as in the movie, but it looked plastic, but it looked good. And then he took one step and he fell over. And I started to check on my boss, like, gotta get out of here. Cannot laugh. Everybody's freaking out. I remember that. And in Star Trek, for any Trekkies that might be watching, I am very proud of the fact that I held up the tradition. There was my first meeting. The way it works when you do concept art is you do a bunch of drawings. The director comes in and either he approves something or he doesn't. If he doesn't approve it, you're out. You work for a week and either he approves it or he doesn't. And I had a whole drawing and he had approved them. And I was sitting outside waiting. And then my boss, Russell Bobbitt, who was the prop master on that, he waved me in. He said, come on in. So I came in, I'm in like shorts and flip flops, and they're all like the executives and JJ and all these people. And they're going through the art. And one of the things that came up was that there was a bar scene. For anybody who's seen the Star Trek reboot, there's a scene where Kirk gets into a fight in a bar. And originally there was money in it, and I had designed money for it. And in the middle of the meeting, when they start talking about that, I raise my hand like a kid in school, and the whole meeting stops. And my boss is like, oh my God, what are you doing? And JJ's, yeah, what's up? And I said, well, listen, I mean, it's your movie. You do whatever you want, but there's actually no money in Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, felt that the Federation would have moved past money. And like, you couldn't hear a pin drop in this meeting. And like in the movies, like everybody just stopped and turned to JJ. And he looked over at his assistant and goes, is that true? And he goes, yeah, I think it is. Yeah, he did that in Next Generation. And next thing you knew, they took all money out of the movie. So anybody's like a big Star Trek nerd who cares about that kind of stuff, the minutia. I saved.
Yeah, I was gonna say Doug saved it. Yeah, absolutely. They would have
care about that stuff. They really care about that stuff.
JJ has you to thank, because they would have picked that apart for sure. So now in your career, you've moved on to writing novels. We can see behind you are a couple of your book covers, nicely framed. What made you make the switch into writing novels?
Well, okay, I had a TV show that I wrote and created called Forbidden Science.
That's right.
And it was for Cinemax that was owned by HBO. And it was supposed to be a sexy show. In fact, the original pilot script was called Kinky Science. So it was supposed to be a sexy show. Like a Frankenstein, kind of modern X-Files Frankenstein meets, that kind of thing, but with synthetics and androids and this and that. And, but they took it too far. They went way too sexualized with it. So we had to change the name to Forbidden Science. And I wasn't happy with what they did. And then it didn't have an audience. Like the late night audience was like, there's too much talking. And then the sci-fi audience was like, there's too much sex. And so it died. And I sold three scripts up there. I sold one again a couple years ago, but before then I sold three more, and they just ended up on the shelf. And I had two ideas. I had one for a script that everybody had liked called Homeland, about a synthetic named Shelly. I mean, it was a TV pilot, and it had the guy who did Harry Potter. His name's escaping me right this second. But the guy who did Harry Potter was interested in the first two films, and then the Bowie's son who did a movie called Moon, he was interested in it. But they couldn't get it off the ground. So I was like, maybe I'll make that my first book. And I got about 50 pages in like 2017, and I just wasn't ready to write it. Ironically, those 50 pages did end up in what finally became Shelly, my fourth book. But I decided to go with the ship first because it was contained. Woman's trapped inside a spaceship. There's something in there. She's trying to get out because it's crashed. And outside, people are trying to get in. Like that, much more contained. And then in the third act, you go into the far distant future and all this. So I decided to go with that. And I ended up writing a trilogy of books. Because I wanted people to read my writing because people weren't reading them. They pay you 20, 25,000 in advance on a script. And then you get the back end, you get like 100, 200, 300,000, whatever it is when they start shooting, but they never started shooting. So I didn't want to give them the ship or Shelly. So I did the ship, and I did the ship trilogy, and they did all right. I mean, they certainly sold in the thousands, but not the high thousands. And then my fourth book, I was finally ready to write Shelly. And there had been this whole conversation in the news at the time about the pronouns and everything. And that made Shelly really work because I was like, the opening line of the book became Shelly and it, not a she, stood in a vast wheat field. And that kind of gave me an in for a modern audience of dealing with androids in a different way. And so that kind of just, and that one ended up doing really well. And I wrote two more sequels. The third one just came out 2 months ago. So Shelly, Our Evolution.
It's funny how the stuff we write in the past winds up coming back full circle into some of the newer stuff that we write because it's always up here as well. But on a side note, I read The Ship. I liked it. So if anybody out
thank
there,
you. Thank
absolutely,
you.
yeah, you gave me that when we were at Comic-Con. So yeah,
Okay.
I enjoyed that. So I'm curious about your writing process because with this whole storyboarding thing, did you bring that into how you write your novels, or do you do a completely different approach?
Yeah, there are apples and oranges. I mean, storyboards is about shots and about the visual, and you're adapting something. Excuse me. With when you're writing, it's much more inside out, if that makes sense. Like somebody asked me once, how do you write? What was it? They want a space battle, like a pilot in a space battle. And I'm like, you don't write it like a movie. You don't write it like you talk about how the ship this and that, and the ships are doing this, and the banking left and the banking right. You put yourself in the cockpit. And then instead of talking about how cool the ships look, you talk about how the thing's reverberating over your head. And then you can describe it as this giant thing, like makes you shake. But it's all inside. It's all insular. And so it's very different writing a screenplay or being anything visual than it is for writing a book. A book is always inside out, instead of outside in, which a movie's always outside in.
It really is. It's two different animals. And if you're not in the industries, either one of them, you really don't. It's like hard to explain, like you were just saying. But once you can get that inside out on the page and then the reader brings it back to you the way you were envisioning it, it's such a treat. So we already discussed how you came up with the idea for Shelly, but I was curious because this has been like a phenomenal success for you. What was the creative process like for that one specifically?
It was hard. I remember the problem with it was the first 100 pages were based on the 55-page TV episode that I had written that everybody liked. So I stuck really close to it. And then I'm like, okay, well, now what? Because now I still had, another 250 pages or whatever to go. And I remember really going back and forth on it and knowing who the villain was without knowing who the villain was, if that makes any sense. Any writers listening would know what that means. It's like, yeah, you know the name and a little bit, but you don't know them until they have a voice and this and that. And, the big twist ending to that, which really kind of launched the whole series, I didn't know until I got to the ending. That was not part of my plan. There's a big twist ending to the first Shelly book that just launched the whole series. And I did not have that plan. It just organically happened in the story. And it happened at the right time. It was my best twist. And it happened at the right time because that's the one that kind of launched, the Shelly series. And I can tell you right now, the big difference is the read-through rate. Like the difference between making money I'm making money as an author and not making money as an author. And to preface this, I'm making not a lot. I think I made 1570 last month. So I'm making, I'm not making enough to live on yet. But I'm definitely seeing the climb. I'm seeing it go from like $50 a month to $1,500 a month. And that's all because of Shelly. And the difference is the read through rate. On the ship books, the read through rate, like you said, you read the first book. Thank you. But you didn't read the sequels. And nothing wrong with that. I'm not coming down on you. I'm just saying, didn't have a read through rate. It had a read through rate of maybe 25, 30, 40%, maybe more from the Comic Cons because a lot of people bought them in collections, but I'm talking Amazon. The read through rate for the Shelly from one to the second one called Murder Mind was between 50 and 70. I mean, it was like really high. And the third one had my biggest launch. My third book, the third Shelly book launched in June. I had 3 times more pre-orders than my first 5 books combined. So it became a really steady growth. And so I already told my formatters that we're in the Shelly business for a while now. So, because that's what you want. You want that read through rate because you'll never really make it on one book. I don't care how good it is. Yeah, well, okay, there's exceptions. I understand The Martian or whatever. But if you're an indie author, the way you make money is you put all your budget and your marketing into the first book. And then if you're lucky, you break even on that. And then you're making all your profit off of the sequels. So like I have the first book selling at $4.99, second one at $7.99. I'm talking ebooks, by the way, $7.99, $9.99 for the third one. And those $7.99s and $9.99s are really what, pays for everything. That's where all my profit comes from,
Which is why it's really important these days to have a series. For those who don't know, read through rate is something we look at as authors on the back end of where we publish our books, mostly Amazon, to see exactly what Doug's talking about. Are they going from book 1 to 2, 3, etc.? So I am curious though, do you like to have a full outline when you start writing, or are you more of a pantster, fly by the seat of your pants, or a mix of both?
I wish I could stick to an outline. I keep trying. It's so stressful. Like right now I'm writing my 4th Shelly book, which will be my 7th novel. And it's so stressful. But outlines really don't work for me. In fact, if I had a criticism to my first book, The Ship, is that I had an outline because I knew the ending. There's this big twist ending in that. And I knew that going in. And I did lots of twists and turns because I'm like, well, because I know where it's going. But I find that to be limiting in some ways. And I don't really use outline. I will sometimes outline to the midway point because for me, the midway point is everything. It's the most important part of the book. I kind of look at books as 2 books. I look at every story as 2 stories. An example that everybody would know is the original Star Wars. The first half of Star Wars is about finding Princess Leia. The midway point is, hi, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you. The second half is about escape the Death Star. It's a totally different film. Even when they're doing the trench run and they're blowing it up, it's only because it's coming to blow up their planet. So they're still trying to escape it. So it's a completely different story. You look at Aliens. I would assume most people know Aliens. The first half is about finding the colonists. Second, midway point, they found the colonists. They're all dead. Most of the Marines get wiped out. And the whole second half is about escaping the planet. It's a sequel. It's a different story. So if I do ever do any kind of outline, I never go past the midway point. It's always about leading up to that point. I wish I had an outline for the midway point on my new book. I don't yet. It's a little scary. I'm 80 pages in. Yeah, so I wish I could do outlines, but I find that the characters, especially when you're several books in, they really start to have their own opinions about things and they don't want to go the way you want them to go. And they don't want to say the things you want them to say. And they tend to shape the story in very different directions. And so I wish I outlined more, but no, I don't.
That's part of the fun of it. I outline to a degree, but it's just like you said, like the story will take on a life of its own. And that's the fun of it for us as writers, because it's sort of like we're reading it for the first time ourselves. So like you said, with the Shelly had like a twist ending you weren't even prepared for, and it was like a surprise to you. So it's a fun experience to be able to have that while you're writing. So outlining to a full extent sort of takes away from that. But so yeah,
it feels stale too, because if you're doing an outline, then you're telling the characters where to go.
Yeah.
And when you get in there, those characters will really, especially by the midway point. I mean, even if it's your first book, by the midway point, those characters are really going to have their own, feelings about things. And you'll definitely feel that pull too. You'll definitely be like, these characters are just starting to say things that I was not expecting them to say. And they're wanting to go ways that I wasn't expecting them to go, you know.
Which is why it's important to flesh those characters out and have like they almost jump off the page for you. So when you started Shelly, did you intend to make it a series from the jump, or?
I mean, it was my hope, but I didn't. Yes, I did plan it to be a series, but it was going to be a little bit different. You know, I can't say how, but the twist ending to Shelly really changed the trajectory of the series. But the core concept of it was always the same. I grew up with the X-Files. My favorite review of anybody who's given me a review was somebody said, think less Blade Runner, more X-Files with androids. And that really nailed what I was going for. I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but I'd love to buy him a beer. That was my favorite quote of any review I got. But yeah, no, Shelly was listed in the top 10 for a website called Reading Freely, and that got me a lot of reviews, a lot of interest. And then Professor Geek, and then Indie Author Showcase had me as number 2 book of the year, but the other one wasn't sci-fi, so I can call it the best sci-fi of the year. Yeah, you know, and then I just started getting reviews starting to come in naturally, organically, and that really propelled it, the series, you know. So
see, and that's why reviews are so important, especially for indie authors, because it pumps us up and helps us to understand what, you know, readers are enjoying. One of my favorite reviews that I ever got on my fantasy novel Demon Hunter, I was compared to Robert E. Howard's Conan, and I was like, I can die happy now.
There you go. There is no higher compliment.
Absolutely. So you talked about the read through rate, and that's, you know, great for sales and everything, but it's also got to feel really good that it's being well received by readers, and also, you know, the reception it's getting from, like you were saying, the reviewers and everything else. How is that? You said you had like a book club deal that did really well. So if you wanted to talk about that and the experience so far.
Yeah. So what happened was in December, I hit 1 million pages read on Kindle Unlimited.
Wow.
It took me 5 books to get to that. And now I'm going to hit 2 million in less than a year. I'll hit it by November, probably, maybe early December. So it could be a full year. But what took me 5 books before is now happening in 1. It's almost like those rich billionaire people who say the first million is the hardest. It really is true when it comes to the Kindle Unlimited things, especially if you have a series. The first million's hard. Once you get to that, though, that second Shelly book, Murder Mind, really propelled it, because they're like, oh, this is a series. And then the third one, another lesson I learned, because I had always heard, you know, if you're an indie author, don't do long pre-orders, because it won't help with your ranking, because they don't count it if it's not in a short period of time. That's true. It didn't help my ranking. It really helped with this one. So that was bogus information. Don't listen to that. If you got a series, you make sure that within 6 months before it comes out, you get a cover up there. Because my pre-orders for this one were significantly higher, and that helped my sales and my Kindle reads and stuff for the other 2, because they're like, oh, this is a series with more books coming. Let me jump in now. Like, I definitely saw that trajectory continuing. And I launched the cover for this right after it hit 1 million Kindle pages. So that just kept the engine running, you know. I think I got a little sidetracked. The question was, it makes me feel good. It makes you feel good. Yeah. Sorry, a little tangent. I'm always telling writers, don't go on a tangent, but I just went on a tangent.
It's all good. I had actually a couple of questions pop up in my head because you were talking about that. I was just going to say, yeah, it's important if you're doing a series to have that next book ready in the queue, because they're excited about it and they want to jump on that pre-order. But I was going to ask you, what is your thoughts about rapid release? Because I tried it with one of my superhero series and I didn't like it. It felt like I was rushing the process. What are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't do it. I would love to try it. I see some authors that are like, they release 2 or 3 books a year. I release 1 book a year. It's in June of every year. Hopefully, knock on wood, could be July or August if I run late on the next one. But generally speaking, it's been between May and June of each year. Maybe one was in July. I can't remember. But I release every summer, and it takes me 4 months usually to write the first draft, but that's a pretty polished first draft. And then another month and change to tighten it up to a second draft. It goes to a developmental editor. And then I make a third draft off of that. Then it goes back to him for the line edit. And then at that same time, I'm dealing with the cover, and I'm lining up the formatter for, a couple months out. So there's like a 4-5, there's like a 5-month period of the actual writing. And then there's another 3 or 4 months worth of the getting it all together and getting it, edited and everything. I don't understand how people are doing 2 books or 3 books a year. They must be doing well enough that they don't ever have to do anything else. Because I have kids, I still storyboard. I got 2 movies lined up right now that I'm working on. I do some commercials for T-Mobile and stuff. Great client. Wish I could use them. The T-Mobile doesn't work actually in my area, but shout out to T-Mobile for keeping the lights on. But maybe if I was full-time writer, which I think I'm a few years away from, but if I was a full-time writer, then yeah, I could probably do 2 books a year, but no more than that. I could never do a rapid release. I could never do, and I could never like sit on a book. Like if I was really proud of a book and sit on it to write 2 more books, that's so not my personality. I could never do that. That takes a level of patience that I would never in a billion years have.
For sure. Yeah. The only time I tried it was when the world was shut down and we couldn't leave our houses anyway. But I didn't like the process because it felt forced. I would rather take my time with it and like do a couple of polishes. I think it's more important to be consistent. And like you said, you have one every summer. That's fantastic. Readers know when it's coming out. And also not to wait, over 10 years before you finish your damn series like some authors. But that's a side note. Question from me specifically, because I am currently working on a science fantasy dystopian that I'm in the process of editing. I don't write science fiction. You write a lot of science fiction. How do you approach that to make it seem almost realistic? Or what is your approach to writing science fiction? Do you just go off the cuff, or do you want it grounded in some way?
All of my science fiction, there's a difference between what I enjoy and what I write. I grew up with Star Wars. That had a huge impact on me. I'm 54, so that was my generation. I could never write it. I mean, I don't think I could. If I did, I would take a very different approach because there's nothing fantastical about my writing. Everything has to be very grounded. In fact, I always have just the one element that's off. So for the ship saga, it was these people are just like us. They're just normal people, but they're put in these crazy circumstances. And the alien ship, which may or may not even be alien, is the one thing that's off. For Shelly, they have cars, they have phones, they have an internet, but it's called the Index because it's a little bit farther in. It's a government-controlled internet. And there's synthetics, and synthetics are really the only thing that's different. And even that I'm extrapolating from, our own world. Like, where do I think, what it would be like if synthetics androids were around in 50 years. So, I keep it I would say my books are about 80% very grounded. And then there's the 20% that's really out there. Maybe a little bit more with the ship books, but for Shelly, it's definitely because I don't really, because I've been in science fiction for so long and in the film industry, I don't think about the science fiction elements much. I think about the mystery because they're detective stories. I think about the mystery. I think about the pacing. I think about the characters. And then the synthetics are just on every page. Like, I don't have to think about it. They're there. And it's like, well, what kind of technology would the killer have used to do this, And then there's a little science fiction element there. But even that is usually based on something that I think, I could foresee based on the technology that we know today, So I don't ever think about it when I'm writing as, I'm writing sci-fi. I think about it, I'm writing something that's very grounded and realistic. And it seems very real to me when I'm writing it. And I think that helps. But if the reader believes that I think it's realistic, and I think it helps them believe it's realistic. And then I just have the icing on the cake. It's like when you see a cake, you see the icing. But in reality, that's just a thin layer on top. The whole cake underneath is just, whatever a cake is made out of.
So at this point, you've been doing it for so long, you don't necessarily need to do any type of research for the science elements.
I do. I would certainly look into it. I'm working on my new book deals with a technology that doesn't exist yet. And so I'm always trying to see whether or not this is believable. Can I extrapolate this from something that's now, so yeah, but I try to keep it as grounded as I can.
Absolutely. So my channel and what I've been doing lately is all about basically writing and wellness, but now it's mostly high performance creatives and wellness. And your wife, Pam, shout out to Pam, is involved in a lot of health and fitness,
Say
right?
Pamela. She'll be so
Oh,
upset if she watches this. You say,
Pamela.
she gets so
Pamela.
mad about Pam. To the point where in 15 years together, even in the worst arguments, I've never once called her Pam. It'd be like a bridge too far.
But she's involved in a lot of health and wellness, right?
Yeah, she's
Does she ever get on you about taking regular breaks or stretching or anything like that while you're sitting there in the seat for 8 hours?
No. She's more about the fact that I'm in my head. Like I'll be at dinner table and I'm thinking about what I'm going to do about the next chapter tomorrow, and you know, that kind of thing. So normal wife stuff of like, hey, are you with us or not? You know, that kind of thing. But no, she does. I mean, yeah, I guess she does. I mean, sometimes she'll be like, you know, this and that, but about something if I'm eating something. But no, it's not like an everyday occurrence or anything.
Do you take regular breaks or you just nose to the grindstone?
Oh, I'm not nose to the grindstone. I write in the morning. I try to write for 2 to 3 hours, and then I do another 2 to 3 hours in the evening on marketing. So the morning is about writing, the evening is about marketing. But no, I try to write. I try to write 2 to 3 hours a day. My chapters are short, not in the ones you read. The shit books are a little bit long, and actually those were pretty short too. But Shelly's very short. My chapters, every chapter is a scene, and I like to get in and out of there. So both as a reader and as a writer. So you know, typical man. But I try to get out of there within no longer than 7 pages. So most of my chapters are about 5 pages. So I write about 5 pages in the morning, and then I'm done for the day. I might edit a little bit later if something's bothering me about it, because it's hard for me to move forward if there's something really nagging me behind me. But yeah, I try to just get through a chapter a day every day, and the days that I don't write, I didn't write. I know there's people like, you have to write every day. I've never felt that way. You know,
Yeah.
I have a deadline
Mhm.
and I have to get a first draft done by Thanksgiving every year. And so, you know, I don't stress it. I'm right now, I'm at page 80. Thanksgiving's a ways away, so I'm not overly stressed.
That's a good process. It's just do whatever you can do. You don't have to follow everybody else's formula, you know, as long as you're writing the way that you want to
Everybody's
write it.
different. Every
Absolutely.
method's different. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I
you
would actually tell writers not to sit around listening to the great writers like Stephen King. Yeah, I know he does like 3,000 words a day or 2,500 words a day or whatever, and it pumps out these big long books that really could be half the length every year. But you know what works for him, no matter how talented he is not necessarily going to work for you because you're a different human being.
exactly.
And you know, so I definitely believe in having a deadline. But I always have a start and a beginning, a start date and a end date. My start date is usually 2 to 3 weeks after the book has come out. I never write until the book is out. And when I'm waiting for the book to come out is the time that I can read, because I can't really read when I'm writing. And then I write, you know, for 3 or 4 months, 4 months probably straight. And then if I miss some days in there, I miss some days in there. I have my deadlines I have to hit, you know.
So what do you like to read whenever you get the chance to read?
Well, I've definitely read everything by Robert E. Howard, and not in a while, but I have, and Edgar Rice Burroughs and all those guys, H.P. Lovecraft, all those guys. But what do I read? I read, geez, I try to read a little bit of everything. I've read some James Patterson recently. I read some Michael Crichton. I read some, what did I read recently? I read a lot of the Star Wars EU books, nothing that the Disney years, but like the EU from before then. Um,
You read this really great dragon fantasy, didn't you?
I did. I read your first book. I read the first of the Dragon books. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I emailed you that I liked it a
No, I
lot.
know. I appreciated that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So you have
Are
kids.
you marketing those now, or what are you doing with those?
I finished the trilogy on that one. I actually won an award for it. It's right here. So I won best action
Wait, I
adventure.
never won
Yeah.
an award. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So but check that off my bucket list actually. It was I wanted to win an award and I did. But that's why I've just gotten back into fiction writing because I missed it. I've been doing this wellness stuff for a little bit. That's why I was asking you about the science fiction, because the one that I'm working on now is more geared towards that type of it's got some fantasy in it, but it's more in like the dystopian science realm. That's why I was asking you about it. So that
I would
is
just say that if
hopefully.
you're doing something that's really out there, like more out there than what I'm doing,
Mhm.
is that I make it very clear to my readers how the world works. You know, a lot of people give Phantom Menace a hard time, and it's got its issues. But I could tell you exactly the politics of that world, how that world works, why Palpatine is doing what he's doing, why the Jedi are doing how they believe, what they're doing, world building wise, it was fine. It was the rest of it that had some issues. But if you're going to do something that's farther out there than maybe I'm doing, like farther out in the future or more different out there, make sure that the people's questions are answered in ways that comes naturally to the story. Because how does the government function? How does the world function? How do people, and you don't have to say it. You can show it. Like, if there's people waiting in line to do something or whatever, well, what are they waiting in line for? Maybe that can tell you something about the world, I would definitely do that. I think that's the key to world building,
Yeah, it's not that far ahead in the future. It's sort of, I started writing this on pretty much 10 years ago, and I was doing my superhero series at the same time. And that one I put all my energy into, and this one went into a drawer. So now that I circled back to it, there's a lot of things that have changed, especially with the world at large and AI and tech and everything has changed. So I have to implement those type of elements, but it is a dystopian apocalyptic. So this is a lofty thing to say, but it's sort of The Walking Dead meets Game of Thrones. And it only meets Game of Thrones because it's multiple points of view.
Okay.
But it is like a dystopian kind of Walking Dead-esque zombies, stuff like that, but with like a lot of science fantasy tech to it. So hopefully that's coming out in October, the first one. If I can get my butt in gear and go.
Well, if you're ever looking for a cover artist, I highly recommend Thea at Enchanted Ink. She's really good. Because I come from an art background, I sketch up all my covers, but I work with her and she paints them. And
I generally do I generally do all my own, except for the superhero one, which needed to look like a comic book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely not an AI person for covers, regardless of where that tech is going.
I would have no problem with it in the fact that AI, you can't own it. You can't market it. You can't do anything with it. And people then will think your book has AI in it.
Mm-hmm.
I use AI for marketing every day. Like my marketing images, I think I sent you a few if you want to throw some up. They definitely have AI in there, but the book cover doesn't. But you can't market on Facebook. It's all AI. There's AI throughout that whole thing. So anybody who says, I don't use AI on marketing, I'm just like, well, you're the only human being and it's not going to serve you well, because you kind of have to use some AI in marketing, because the systems that are promoting your ad that you didn't use any AI on have so much AI in it.
Yeah,
it's almost ridiculous.
If you think you're not using AI and you're using meta ads, you'd be mistaken there too. So
you're absolutely using AI and when you switch them all off, because I switch off so many things, because to do books, you have to cater things differently than the way Facebook wants you to cater them. But it's still in the system. It's still so profoundly part of the system. So I have no problem using AI for marketing, because that's a different thing than the product in which I am making. I am writing a book. I am designing a cover. I'm having Thea, an artist that I pay about $600 or $700 to paint it. And then I'm paying a formatter, whatever I'm paying them. And then I have my editor that I pay $2,000 per book on. So I always have those costs. I always have $3,500 per book in my head, and I have to make that back as fast as possible. What I am truly happy about, more than sales, more than anything, is that our evolution in 2 months has paid for itself. That's never happened to me before. That I'm very proud of. So that's paid off. So now anything I make on our evolution will be profit. That's the first time ever happened to happen that fast. Usually it takes a year to make the money back. And things have just been ramping up with Shelly, that the second one took us just a few months. Murder Mind took just a few months. This one took only 2 months. So, it's getting faster. So, but I'm always looking at the costs too. I think I went on a tangent again.
This is a good example of there's no like really overnight success. This took you a little while to get rolling like this. But I am curious, because I have introduced something new into these podcasts. I like to call it the gritty middle. What is something that throughout your career that you have overcome that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I mean, I have examples of things that were really hard that I didn't know if I could do, and I did it.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I have a very specific thing. So I've done all these big storyboard movies, right? The hardest movie the biggest scene I ever did was, I remember I got a script. I had a assistant storyboard artist, a woman working with me, and we got all these scenes in, and I gave her all the other scenes except for this one. And it was the 10 Commandments for somebody in South America. And I took the big parting of the Red Sea thing. And the opening line to that was basically a million Jews are hanging out by the ocean, waiting with the storm coming in. On the other side are like tens of thousands of Egyptians on horseback and carriages thundering down the mountain towards them. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to draw a million Jews and a 10,000 and 10,000 Egyptians?
Wow.
I remember drawing that. And so I was always, of all the things I've done, as far as storyboards go, that was probably the one I was most proud of. As far as writing goes, I've always been very proud of it wasn't just that I wrote Shelly, the first Shelly book. It was, this is going to sound really conceited, but there's no other way to talk about it. I nailed it. I nailed the ending in a way that I didn't know that I was going to, that created a whole series because it wasn't planned out. And I was really worried about, could I live up to the original 55-page pilot script that everybody had loved? And I think I exceeded it. And then I was able to really take this character that everybody had loved in the film industry and stuff. But that's, even though they were powerful people, there was like a few hundred of them that had read it, if that. And now it's been read by well over 10,000 people. That I'm very, very proud of, and most importantly, I wrote it at the right time, because if I had written it as my first book, I would have failed. It wouldn't have gone. I would have thought it was great or whatever, but it wouldn't have done great. I had to know enough about writing to have written 3 books to know the difference between screenwriting and novel writing. I had to know enough about what to take down, because if you put a page from the ship and next to Shelly, there's half the amount of words describing the same thing, because in horror, you have lots of description. In a detective novel, you keep it moving. So I trimmed it way down. I had the confidence to say, I can just condense this whole scene into 3 sentences. And finally, the timing, like I had talked about with that whole pronoun thing and stuff. And I always write books that I'm very proud of the fact that it appeals to any political party. I know Professor Geek, who's really loved my books, is a staunch conservative. I've had other people that are very liberal and they've really liked it. So I've been able to ride that line, but it came at the right time because identity was such a thing when I was writing Shelly. So, I suppose the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that I pulled Shelly off, that I pulled it off.
Timing can be everything, and you should be proud of that. It's funny you say you meet both audiences, both sides of the political party. My warning trigger in my next book is going to be, don't read this because I'm going to piss off everyone. So I'm unapologetic about it. But yeah,
with that. Every writer is different. I have just always I try to have as broad an audience, because I'm actually they all take place in Washington, D.C. and they deal with politics, but they take place in futuristic politics. So you can definitely see the parallels, but because they're robots, I can get away with a lot more, so
you can, like, you grew as a writer, and as it should be. So with that said, what advice would you have for somebody who's just starting out in writing? Because this channel actually was mostly for writers, being a writer myself. What would be your best advice? Because you were talking about condensing the same type of description into a couple of words, which is basically, I talk about kill your darlings. Everybody knows that well, in the writing community, we know that means you're going to have to kill your best work because it has to meet the pacing of what you're trying to do. But for you, what would be a piece of advice that you would give somebody?
Let's see. I'll give a few. I'll give a couple. I love my tangents. Number one, they always say write what you know, and that's not true. But I do think that you should write when you're experienced enough in life to write. I know that there are a few writers in their 20s that have done really, really well. So I'm not saying that it's impossible. But I do think that there's something to be said for writing a little bit later in life, because then, no matter how fantastical your thing is, you've experienced enough that you can keep that pretty grounded. I definitely, and I think that reading a lot, I've been amazed. I've actually met some people that are like indie authors and they're like, oh, I don't read that much. I'm like, I don't understand that. If you're not reading several books a year, at least when I don't read when I'm writing, but even then I'm still listening to audiobooks. But I mean, I'm always reading. I'm always aware of what other writers are doing and how they're actually achieving a scene, like how I break it down. So I'm aware of it. And then my third big piece of advice would be, I am a big believer. Yes, of course, the 3 act structure, but as I said earlier, I'm a big believer in that midway point. I really think that it should be shattering at the midway point. It's either the biggest success or the biggest failure of their entire life at the midway point. They call it either a false success or false defeat because it's not actually over. But I would absolutely, the reason I would suggest it is then you're not writing towards 4 or 5 or 600 page goal. If this is your first book or your second book, whatever it is, it can be really daunting to try to get to 80,000 words or whatever your goal is. So cut that in half, right towards the midway point. Just their whole first half is writing towards the midway point. And when you get to the midway point, your character should either be at the greatest moment of their entire life, or they are so utterly screwed, you have no idea how to get them out of that. And that's when you're in a great spot for a second half. So
that is a great piece of advice because it takes a lot of the pressure off of let me try to do this great big novel. You're just trying to meet that middle point that you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all my books are the same. They're all 300, my manuscripts are 75,000 words. So that's 350 pages. And so 175 is my midway point. My first act ends on, usually around page 70, which is 15,000 words. My midway point though is what I'm really going towards. That's 175. So right now I am writing a 175 page novel, and then I will have to write another 175 page novel after that. That's the way I look at it.
It's a good approach. So I think you mentioned before what you were working on, but let us know again, what's next for you?
The next Shelly book. I haven't announced the title.
And that's book 4?
Book 4. So we have the first one, my best-selling book, Murder Mind, the sequel, and the newest one, Shelly, Our Evolution, which is a play on revolution, evolution, robot evolution, our evolution. So it's a play on words. In fact, that's actually on the back. For this one, I actually posted this on day 1 on Facebook, and it said evolution, revolution, robot evolution, our evolution begins. And I locked myself in that's what this book would entail, and I wouldn't be done until I had all these things. So those are the 3 Shelly books. And then obviously there's the ship books too. Do
you have a plan in mind for how many Shelly books you're going to write, or just as many as keep coming to you?
I'm hoping for 7. That's my goal, is I'm hoping for 7. Because then I'll have my goal was to hit, I started, my first book came out at 49 because I wanted to beat Bram Stoker to the punch. He released Dracula at 50. So I wanted to get it out by 49. And then my goal was to hit 10 books before 60. And I'm on schedule for that because I'm 54 now. And I've got 6 in the bag. So that's the goal. If I don't make the goal, that's fine. I mean, I won't release anything that I don't think is good as the first 3 Shelly books. So, and right now I'm writing and I'm thinking this isn't as good. So I got a long way to go on the new one.
Yeah,
so.
I felt that on the third Dragon fantasy that I wrote. It was just not. It felt more Disney than what I was trying to go for. But it is what it is.
Even upon release.
No, I fixed it up to a degree, but there was some reviews were like, this kind of went this way when the other 2 went this way. I was like, yeah, I don't know what happened. I apologize.
Well, one thing I did was with Our Evolution was I did not think I was going to finish it. I remember I put it aside. I got through the first act, which is 70 pages, and I put it aside. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to finish it. I think I'm going to take the year off because I had written a book a year for 5 or 6 years. And I was like, maybe I'll just take the year off. Why? They got their sequel that they've been asking for. I could take a little time off. And then I sat down outside and I read the 70 pages and I'm like, oh crap, this is really, really good. I'm really liking this. I'm going to have to figure out how to finish it. And so that's why I finished Our Evolution. So hopefully I'll have that same, come to Jesus moment with the new one. I'm going to put it aside for a couple of weeks and, and see how I feel about it. But it's got a lot of good elements. It's just, I can tell that it's not, there's something I'm missing and I'm going to have to figure out what that is. So, everybody goes through that though.
That's what's going on right now with the science fantasy that I'm working on. Cause I am in edits and I'm like, there's just some elements that need some small tweaks, but then I'll get to it in the back end as soon as I know where I'm trying to go with it. But yeah. So if you were fantasy casting for a movie version of Shelly, who would you want to play the lead or TV
a young
series?
Charlize Theron? Like
that's kind of what the image looks like.
20s. Yeah, she'd have to be like 20s.
Mm-hmm.
If it was in the 90s, then maybe Sharon Stone. In the 90s, because I gave her hair on one of these. She did a movie called Sphere, and I told I get my artist, this is her hair from Sphere. I mean, not she painted herself, but that's what it's based on. So I certainly had those actresses in mind. I don't know any of the new people because I'm one of those old fudgy duddy people
or
whatever.
Same. Yeah.
I like Purple Rain is still a new album to me. So, I mean, like, I'm not,
I know
I'm not really
if I see a movie star in my head while I'm writing, it's them from like 10 years ago, or I don't know any of the new people either. So
One of the questions I get the most, because I'm in the film industry, is do you want your books to, be in the films, or when are they going to be made? I have my wife has an interest in that. I have zero interest in that. So I don't really think from a cinematic standpoint as much, just because I've been on the other end. I worked on Harry Potter. I worked on Maze Runner. I worked on The Uglies and a bunch of other things that were books turned into movies. And the books are always better.
They always are. I'm with you on that. I've had my very first novel that I self-published, The Crescent, has been in production hell for like 10 years, and I'm just over it at this point. I'm like, that's a whole nother avenue that I never actually wanted to get into, but if it happens, it happens. But at this point, I'm like, I'm just focusing on what I can do. So
yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So let everybody know where they can buy copies of Shelly.
Well, you can get it on Amazon. I mean, I have a website, but those are really for the people who want the signed hardcovers. You can get those on alienskypublishing.com. But 99.999% of the time, people just buy it on Amazon. If they're Kindle readers, they can get it for $4.99. If they want a paperback hardcover, audiobook. The audiobooks for the Shelly, all my books have audiobooks, but the audiobooks for Shelly are done by Kelly Tager, who's an award-winning narrator. She's absolutely amazing. And when the first time you hear her Shelly voice, which I think is about 5 minutes in on the first book, because she doesn't start speaking for the first few pages. As soon as you hear her actual voice, you're like, that's Shelly. Like, you'll just know it. We'll be like, that's absolutely Shelly. She nailed it. And, yeah, so she's great. So if you like audiobooks, Kelly Tager's audiobooks are great. Otherwise, you can get it on, Kindle, or you can get it on anything it's available on all the websites. It's just, I shop on Amazon, so I have to sort of promote Amazon.
Right.
I know there's some people out there that are like anti-Amazon, and I'm like, you're young, because you would not be able to do what we are doing now with self-publishing without Amazon. I mean, they changed the game. They are 70% of all book sales. And if you have a good formatted book, you have no typos, it's well written, you have a good cover, you have the exact same opportunity as Stephen King and everybody else who's going on that platform.
It's like anything else. It's like AI. It's like social media. It's the nature of the beast. It's important to have those elements. Like you said, you have an ebook, you have a print book, an audiobook. It's important to have all those things in place so you can touch all the audiences. So it is what it is. You got to capitalize on what resources that you have. So where, if you want people to follow you in your writing career, where can they follow you on social media?
They use Doug Brode, DougBrode on Facebook. I think I've got a couple of them. There's one that says Doug Brode, artist and author. I think those are the people that follow me from the books. I should be more social media savvy. I'm really not, because I'm old. I got the gray. I'm not that social media savvy. But if you read one of my books, and sometimes people reach out and ask questions or say something about what they thought about the book or whatever, you're welcome to. I'll definitely write back right away. So.
And I'll have all those links in the description for you guys to go check it out. Definitely pick up a copy of Shelly. Go get the autograph copy. I mean, that's going to be, just don't go selling it on eBay or anything later on. Hang on to it.
I always personalize my autographs when I do Comic-Con and stuff. Like, I always personalize it.
I do too, but you would be surprised that they still wind up. And I'm like, really? Okay. Thanks for coming on, Doug. This has been absolutely fantastic. I don't get a lot of opportunity to talk to writers on here, so this has been great for me as well. Anything final that you want to say?
Well, this is actually the first time I've been interviewed by another writer. Well, that's not true. I've been interviewed by a couple of others, but yours I've read. I hadn't read any of theirs. Like, you're a legit good writer. I really liked the book. I thought it was really well written.
Thank you.
I thought it was very tight. No typos. Well crafted. Characters were interesting. Drew me in right in the first couple chapters, because I have no patience. Like, I will give a writer maybe 10 pages.
Agreed.
And that's being kind.
Yeah.
And so, you drew me in right away. So
yeah, the guy falling off the cliff. I remember you saying. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really, yeah.
Yeah. See, I miss writing. That's why I got to get back into it. been, my love affair for life. So I tried to quit, and then the Raina character popped into my head just looking at a statue. Do you ever get random ideas like in the worst possible places? Like, I need a piece of paper, gotta write that down.
Yeah, I have notes on my phone all the time. I
Yeah.
have that little note thing, and I
Mhm.
wish I could figure out how to say them into the thing. I know I sound like an old funny idea again, but I can never figure out how to just dictate it. So I'm sitting there typing
Yeah, you
one
gotta use the
letter at a
voice
time.
recorder.
I I really do. I really do. So, that's a constant thing. Another thing I would say to you is you should really market your dragon books again.
I was. I
We're
just
not
fell off.
good. They're really good, and you get a lot more readers with that. The book series doesn't die. In fact, what I did, I guess I can announce it here. I mean, it's not much of an announcement. I just hadn't told anybody, but I am taking the ship books and I'm putting them in a Kindle collection. I had been hesitant to do that because I thought once you did that, you couldn't have the Kindle books individual anymore. Not true. It's a separate SKU. So if somebody just wants one, they can buy one, or you can get the collection. So I'm actually releasing the ship collection probably within a month or so. They're formatting that right now. And so, I will begin marketing that, which I haven't marketed the ship books in several years now because everything's been, once Shelly kind of like hit right out of the gate, that became Shelly World. But I am looking forward to, getting some of that AI marketing material there.
There you go. Nothing
For
wrong
the
with it. Hey,
ship.
I use AI for research right now, and I will swear by that. It is a useful tool, just not for my creative stuff.
Yeah, no, for marketing, yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with it. So, and you can't advertise on Facebook without using it
You
anyway.
really can. Yeah, it helps. It helps. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. This has been outstanding. I hopefully will see you again on one of the Comic Cons here down the road. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
anybody who lives in LA will be at LA Comic Con and Halloween weekend. I really wish it wasn't Halloween weekend because I have young kids. So I'm gonna have to leave early on a Saturday night, which sucks because Saturday is the big sell day.
yeah.
But obviously the kids come first. So but we will be there Halloween weekend at LA Comic Con. And if you want to come out, I'm telling you, you can sleep on our couch and get a booth at LA Comic Con.
There you go. As
I've
soon as
offered it to you several years now, and
I know. I just haven't had any thing to promote. But when this new one launches,
you have all
absolutely.
your black books. Like I think you're
I
really
have my
thinking that it's about
backlist.
the new
Yeah,
book. It's not about the bad new book. I have
Yeah.
not done a single piece of marketing for my new book. It's all about the first book. And even though you're doing a new series now, it's not out yet. I would be promoting your dragon books. Get a big dragon banner and put up a booth. People don't know if it's
I
you or
was.
them.
Life threw me a curveball, and it threw me into doing more of this health and wellness stuff. For just, it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, particularly for people in our field. Because what I noticed working a 9 to 5 is, people don't know how to take care of themselves sitting all day, and they skip breakfast and they eat lunch at their desk. So I wanted to do this to try to help creatives to keep their energy up, to keep their focus, because I am a certified trainer as well. So that's why I felt the calling to do this, and my writing kind of went onto the side. I am trying to launch a course for people. That's what my focus has been. That'll come out in August, and then I can circle back around to my fiction. I'm not abandoning the fiction. It's just that I wanted to do this, and it's been encompassing a lot of my time so far. So
I have one last piece of advice because I was listening to what you were saying. I was thinking I have one last piece of advice directly for your audience. It's going to sound a little crazy, but hear me out. I used to have Star Wars posters and all that. In fact, I worked with Hayden Christensen on something and he signed one of the posters, and I had all those posters up and all that stuff. I took them all down. I don't have anything in my office except for Prince tambourine, which cost me $200. You spend $200 for tambourine, you keep that shit up. But I'm sorry. But the rest is all my creations. Everything on my wall is something I created, and it's not out of ego. It's because when I'm sitting in the chair and I'm struggling through the next chapter, I can look up and be like, I did this before, I can do it again. And so I'm a big believer of putting up all your own accomplishments on the wall. I don't care if it's what it is. You don't have to have them framed and stuff, but I would definitely put up things that you are proud of on your wall to remind you when things are hard. I've done it before, I can do it again. So that's my last piece of advice for anybody who might be a creative.
Great piece of advice. I've actually been wanting to do that ever since I saw the movie Basic Instinct, and Sharon Stone's character had all of her novels framed on the wall. It's like, I'm doing that. And it also brings to mind, it also brings to mind something I heard Arnold Schwarzenegger say whenever he had approached a movie. He would ask them, "What's the poster?" So he could get a visual of it. Yes,
Yeah.
But yeah, great stuff here, Doug. Come back anytime. Maybe when you launch the next Shelly book, we can talk about that or whenever you want. But I appreciate you being on the show. And this has been a great chat.
Thanks so much. I knocked on wood when you said the next Shelly book.
Well, I'll say a prayer for
Got a
you.
long way to go on this one.
It's
early days.
It's a process. Yeah, keep turning them out. But
yeah.
Thanks again. Until then, guys, this is Coach Cyn, and show's over in Synergy.